Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to our show. I'm glad you're here tonight. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and we're just going to start with my name. My name is Brother Mark. I'm a member of the People-Pueblo Party, and we are an independent political party. We believe in common sense politics for the people, the planet, and the animals. We have a holistic approach to politics and to justice. And our goal is to have popular control. And basically, if I had to summarize what that means, it's government and society of the people, by the people, and for the people. Because right now, the government and the society is being mismanaged, misrun by a small group of billionaires that uses the Democratic and Republican Party to do its bidding. And you can see clearly what that has led us to. A terrible, horrible response to a pandemic in which the United States, the richest country in the world, has the highest number of deaths, has the highest number of cases of infection, and also where racism and brutality against Black people and people of color and poor people in general continues unabated. So we're gonna focus on that tonight, and of course, our show is the People's TV hashtag Take Action Save Lives, and this is our sixth episode, and we're glad if you're coming back, and we're glad if you're new to the show. So I'm just gonna briefly talk a little bit. Over the weekend, there were many and continued protests today, and so over the weekend some of us participated in a car caravan, and we had a good number of cars, and there were thousands and thousands of people out there. I didn't see not one incident of violence or anything that would be that people could throw shade on what happened. It was a great event, and everybody, a lot of people, most people wearing their masks. And this is just one of the pictures that I'm going to show you now. Very quickly, this is I was part of the car caravan. We had our banner from our organization, our political party, and I had my 11-year-old son Camilo. He was there. He was my wingman, and we were out there in protest. And this movement is, even though it is spontaneous to a large degree, has a lot of different kind of people in it. People who are sick and tired of violence and racist violence in particular. And also here in Harlem, because that's where we are located, we had a lot of wonderful young people. There were a lot of older people. It was a very mixed crowd. White people, Black people, Latinos, Asians. It was really very inspiring, very moving, and it really tells you that we need a revolution in this country. And I think Brother Malcolm really pointed that out to us. And you should take a listen to his speeches if you could catch it on YouTube. If they have it on YouTube, it's worth it. It's the speech is called "The Ballad or the Bullet." And so, Brother Malcolm was right on time. He knew that change change happens. Whether we want change to happen or not, it's going to happen. And so we in this country need to decide if we want to get proactively involved and use the ballot and other peaceful measures to produce the revolution that we need, or whether those good people of good conscience are going to stay home and allow the police and others to provoke violence, right? People talk about the violence that's going on in the protests, but a lot of it is provoked and is antagonized by police agents and also by those police who are really working for the billionaires. Now, there are a lot of police who were on the side of the protesters, and we need more of that. We need more of that. We need justice and we need righteousness to prevail. And so Brother Malcolm was absolutely right. The revolution is coming. Is the revolution going to be based on the ballot, or is the revolution going to be based on the bullet? And I think it's within our power to decide which way this thing is going. And so tonight in our first segment, we're going to focus on freeing our minds from mental slavery. And of course, we got that from the song by Brother Bob Marley. And because the mainstream media is not our friend, the mainstream media is not looking out for our interest. And so we have to create our own media. The only time I look at mainstream media is to look at headlines, just so I can be up to date what's happening. But I don't tune in and listen to the propaganda because it's just a form of manipulation. And so tonight in our first segment, and remember, we have three segments. The first is focus on the mind, freeing your mind from mental slavery. The second segment is focus on the body, staying healthy and staying strong. And the third segment is focused on the spirit, having a balanced spirit for longevity, to live a long life, to live a peaceful life. And each segment is around 15, 20 minutes. So you could choose, you decide, hey, I like segments 1 and 2, I'm going to stick around. I don't like segment 3, I'm not going to stick around for that. Or vice versa. I don't like segments 1, and I'll just come back and watch segments 2 and 3. So we did it that way because in this form of media, we don't want to control what people think. We don't want to brainwash people. We don't want to manipulate people. We want people to have social justice and personal liberty. So, because they go together, you can't have one without the other. And so, in this show, we want people to make choices for themselves and decide what they want to do. And so, our first guest we have is a sister. Her name is Chef Sia H. Pickett, and she's a owner of Malata Cuisine, a personal natural food chef in Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn. I used to live in Crown Heights myself. And she's a community chef, certified health coach, a graduate of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and a student at Escoffier Culinary School. I'm sure she's going to tell me if I pronounce that right. She has over 20 years of experience as a holistic chef and instructor. Ms. Pickett is passionate about educating the community about lifestyle options as it pertains to cooking, healthy food, and overall health. And there's a saying that she uses, which is, we are what we eat, and health and food are synonymous. And that's from her. And I'm bringing her on for this segment because, when we were talking about health, she also brought up some great information that I wanted to share with you about what's going on today with the case in particular of George Floyd, but also in general around racist violence and what we could do. So, I hope you enjoy this conversation that we're going to have with the sister. Okay. Okay, sister, welcome. Welcome to our show, to our humble abode here on Facebook Live. And I'm sure you heard what I had just introduced and what I used for a welcome. And in this show, we're trying to give voice to people that the mainstream media doesn't give voice to, right? And so I'm going to let you, you know, say your piece and talk to us because the last time we spoke, you said some really, really important and interesting things.
Well, thank you and welcome everybody, and thank you for having me on the show. I guess when we were having our discussion, I guess my biggest connection to this particular incident is that I used to live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My mother, who fortunately I had went in February to get her for some other reasons, and she's safely in Maryland. But her house is two houses from the corner, and if you stand on the corner, you can see the store, the store that I went to for years, where Mr. Floyd died, where he was murdered. I spoke with the neighbor across the street because she watches my mom's house while she's gone, and just to hear what she had to say. I have a brother who still lives there, and I've heard what he's had to say. I haven't lived in Minnesota for probably 28 years, and I periodically go there because my mom lives there primarily, and my brother lives there. But from what they're telling me, and just from my experience, then when I did live there, and I lived there for a good 10, 12 years, um, Minneapolis had a reputation as Minnesota nice,
Mm,
and it's always been a kind of a liberal community in that sense. I mean, the year back when I moved there, there was only 28,000 blacks in the whole state.
mm,
And so it's always been pretty much predominantly white. Um, for these things to be happening is a lot of it from what my mother has told me over the years of her being politically involved in the politics of Minneapolis and St. Paul. St. Paul and Minneapolis, the Mississippi River is what divides them, and that's why they call it the Twin Cities.
mm,
St. Paul has a larger um, community of color, African American descent, and basically, what brought African Americans to that far north is because originally they worked on riverboats on the Mississippi River, and
mm,
then they also worked on the train. So Amtrak actually stops in Minneapolis from coming from the southern part of the United States. I say all that to give you this history and this context of that there's not really eh, put it this way, there's not a true black community in the sense of it has expanded and grown. The
mm,
northern part of Minneapolis has always been predominantly a neighborhood of color. Where this happened was in South Minneapolis,
mm,
and that area has grown where there are more people of color that live there. The people who own the store are actually Pakistani.
mm,
um, and so they have had to my knowledge, at least from when I lived there, a decent relationship with the community. And even from what my brother tells me about the incident that happened, even for them to call because of the fact that they suspected that this $20 bill was counterfeit,
mm,
the police took it to another level than
mm,
the store just doing their due diligence, the store worker doing their due diligence to say, this bill doesn't seem real. Because they didn't even, to my knowledge, confront Mr. Floyd about
mm,
the bill at all. He was sitting in his car. But now that this has all happened, when I talk to the neighbor, she's saying that they have neighborhood watches now because there are antagonists that are coming from outside of Minneapolis
mm,
who they suspect to be white supremacists that are aggravating the thing. And so the word on the street within the community is that even the fire of the police station was set by the white supremacists, and
mm,
that they're actually showing up at some of these protests acting as though they're a part of the protest, but doing things to escalate it, to
mhm,
create this kind of chaotic environment and to create a level of violence going on. So in return,
mm,
people can end up dead that are brown, that are
right,
black, that are supporters of of people of color.
mm,
She said that her own house has been shot in, and that's
mm,
very unusual for the neighborhood that my mother lives in. It's a middle class neighborhood. That, not to say that one economics or another creates something where that doesn't happen, but I'm
mm,
just trying to create a context that
mm,
this is unusual.
right,
And so I just feel like it's the energy of the time.
mm,
For the time frame that I've lived, I was fortunate as a kid when I was 5 being on my father's shoulder and seeing Martin Luther King.
mm,
I My father was a Pan-Africanist, and so I've been exposed and have met a lot of dynamic people over the years who have tried to fight for civil rights for people.
mm,
And I guess at this particular point in time, independent of my hurt, my anger, my frustration, is that the reality of it is the system that exists was never created to be fair for people
right,
of color. And so
right,
no matter how much we fight and go to have legislation and try to get laws in place and go to legal services and go through court systems and all these things, they were never set up historically ever to support us to
mm,
have a fairness. We've had little pockets of this and that, whatever. And then as a group, as a people, we have fought over the years to emancipate ourselves throughout the years. But there's still always, it's this the same story all over again.
mm,
Um, when this first happened, the first thing I thought about was Billie Holiday's song Strange Fruit,
mm,
where she sings about men being lynched and hanging from a tree from her being on a tour bus going through the South
Mm.
to perform, and her passing a tree and seeing people, um, a man hanging from being lynched. I think of uh, the young man um, who was beaten to death because he looked at, Emmett Till from
Mhm.
looking at a woman that was not a woman of color.
Mhm.
um, these things historically, the four little girls who were bombed in the church. I mean,
Right.
all of these things I've kind of lived through either as a child or
Mm.
as an adult. So it's the same stuff, different day.
Mm.
So yes, we have protest. I have marched in streets and all those things. And I'm not saying that those things don't make a difference.
Mhm.
But as you said earlier in your introduction, it's a whole new revolution. It's a whole new mindset. As Gil Scott Heron, I saw somebody in the comments said the revolution will be televised
Mhm.
because he used to say that revolution won't be televised.
Mm.
Um, I just know in the last couple of years, I've had the blessing to be able to internationally travel. And what I have learned is that there are world citizens. And what I mean by that, the people who just have an intellect, an emotional intelligence
Mhm.
that understands that we all need to live on this planet together
Mm.
and utilize the resources and be, mindful of the earth and like you were saying, animals, all the things that just create the world and live in some kind of balance and harmony with that.
Mhm.
And to me, at the end of the day, I had the fortunate blessing when I was 16 to do some workshops with Frances Wilson. And a lot of people may not know who that is.
Mm.
She's deceased. And again, they can go to YouTube and look up her different speeches and talks and things like that. But she was a psychologist that really talked about racism. Racism is a sickness.
Mhm.
It encompasses being bullied,
Mm.
raping, co-opting, pillaging, all the negative things that they want to point the finger at
Right.
that they're saying that we're doing.
Right.
The other thing is that a lot of times, like you were talking about the mainstream media,
Mhm.
so when you have groups of people who are not of color
Mhm.
that go to the Capitol and they have their weaponry, rifles and machine
Yeah.
guns
Yeah.
and military assault weapons
Mhm.
because they can't get their hair cut,
Mm.
but yet we show up in peace,
Mhm.
no weapons, and then we're treated as though we're doing something that's just ridiculous,
Right.
um, over someone that obviously is dead. When
Mm.
the autopsy report came out, it didn't surprise me
Right.
because it's all corrupt. There's no way, I'm not a doctor,
Mhm.
I'm not a scientist, but there's no way in my logical mind that if
Mm.
somebody is pressing their knee on my neck where my
Right.
air pipe is, that
Mm.
that is not stopping oxygen to get into my brain and into my body.
Right.
I don't care if I had hypertension, blood high blood pressure, diabetes, any of the chronic diseases that we will talk about later. I don't care if I'd had a few cups of beer or wine or whiskey. That is not going to kill me, especially after someone has been handcuffed
Right.
on the ground. There nothing. And so for him not to be charged with a higher level of murder
Right.
and possibly get away with it because of the autopsy saying that that's not what killed him,
Mhm.
that's I'm to the point that that's unacceptable, and we really have to strategize and really think about what's next and what level do we have to take it to.
Right. Right. I mean, the more recent thing, and I kind of put it on the screen, and it has like a mural of Brother George Floyd. The independent coroner said it was homicide, and that it was caused because he was asphyxiated. Right, he couldn't breathe,
Mhm.
and not only was there a knee on his neck, but there were knees on his back,
Mhm.
which also didn't allow his lungs to function properly,
And
because
mhm.
in that first picture, you only see one cop on the side of from the
But
side of the car. Right, but go ahead. I'll let you.
behind him there was
Right,
more. And you're
right,
talking about men that
right.
probably weigh a good one at the lowest weight, one
Mm,
looking at them in stature,
right,
190 to 200 pounds. And
right.
then you're talking about, I know for sure that it was two that
Mhm.
were on him, physically on him. So
Right.
you're talking about close to 400 pounds being
Yeah,
pressed
yeah,
on someone.
yeah,
A-
yeah.
And then he's gasping for air. He's
Right,
saying, I can't breathe.
right.
And technically,
Yeah,
they were supposed to give him CPR
right, right.
based on my understanding
Yeah,
of what they are supposed to do as
right.
civil servants in the capacity that they're in. They're
And
trained to do this.
right, and so the official Hennepin County coroner originally was talking about, oh, he died because of pre-existing conditions, prevailing
Mhm.
conditions, and then he that coroner changed his tune and said, yeah, it was homicide, but it wasn't because of him being choked. Uh, and so they're still playing this game where the coroner there in Hennepin County wants to defend and protect the police. Because they work together. They're in this together, and that's what happens. And one of the things I was listening to a program on YouTube, and they talk about how these officers are incentivized to be violent, to make arrests, and that's how these cops get their promotions. And then when they go to court, the courts always side with the police, right? And so there is no justice in these courts. Out of 16 cases that have been brought to the Supreme Court around police brutality has only accepted two from victims and 12 cases from the police, exonerating the police. And so when these police officers go get their training, they're incentivized to be brutal. They're incentivized to make arrests, especially felony arrests, and they move up in the ranks that way. And so when people say good cops, bad cops, it's not, there are good cops, bad cops, but when you work in a system that incentivizes brutality and incentivizes racial profiling, then this is going to keep happening over and over and over again, you know?
So there's two things around that. Police historically, from back during slavery, were already put
Right,
into motion to oversee and to make sure the people of color were put in their place, so on and so forth. So historically, they've never been friends of the community.
right.
But here's the other side of that. In that same city, a Somalian police officer
Mm,
by accident shoots a woman that's from Australia
mm,
in the dark alley because she was bang. I don't have all the exact details,
mhm,
but from what I've been told when I inquired, was
mm,
that she came out of nowhere banging on the car,
mm,
which startled them. They responded because of the way that it came, and it was an accident that he shot her. And he's doing 15 years,
mm,
and they paid the family, the Australian family, in the millions of
mm.
dollars because of that, and they swiftly took
Right,
care of that.
right.
They didn't have all the inquiry
Mm,
or the different things, steps and processes they did. They were swift and they
right.
took care of it. And he went to jail.
Mm,
Now I wonder if he had been a white officer,
mm,
what would have been. And
right.
then there's this thing of the blue code or whatever it's called, where they all
The blue wall of
stick to
silence.
yes, they all stick together,
Right.
whether they're bad, good, or indifferent.
Hmm.
And even if you wanna look at it from their perspective, sure, they're trying to create a situation where they don't compromise the authority of who the police are because they're supposed to be keeping law and order.
Right.
But as I always joke
Mm,
about that is that cops and robbers are
mm.
of the same mind. Only the cops have the authority to do what the robbers are gonna get arrested for.
Right. Right.
But the mentality of what they do
Hmm.
is similar.
Right.
And so, I mean, there has to be a radical change, and we can go to the Supreme Court and all these
Mhm.
different systems, but it doesn't work, and
Right.
especially since the systems have gotten politicized
Yes.
over all this time, like
Mm,
how we got Kavanaugh in the office now,
yeah.
and just that the Supreme Court is so conservative
Hmm. Hmm.
because they get appointed by the
right,
political system.
right.
And like you said, it doesn't matter whether it's Republican or a Democrat because historically,
Mhm,
people of color were Republican
mhm,
because Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
right.
And so they held him in some esteem because
Mhm,
he helped with the emancipation. But
right,
even that wasn't about freeing black people, it was an
right,
economic move.
right,
And so a lot of times people don't understand the history
right,
of what this country is about
right.
because historically when emancipation happened there were senators of
Mhm,
color and all this kind of stuff,
mhm,
and then that's when they started all these voting things to
right.
make it more difficult because of
Poll
the fact.
tax,
Yes, poll tax and
grandfather clause.
literacy tests
Yeah,
because a lot of times slaves were not formally educated, so
mhm,
they couldn't read and all
right,
these kind of things. And then
right.
that just crushed them out because when emancipation first had, there was a certain amount of camaraderie
Mhm,
that was going on. And
mhm,
as bad rap as the South can get,
mhm,
I say this in the contents of just trying to understand, especially if you have no experience of being in the South. And my family comes from New Orleans, from
mhm,
Arkansas, from Tennessee, from the Gullah Island area. There are white people who interact with black people every day, and there's a
mhm,
friendly community.
right.
So I don't want to villainize and say that all white people have these issues,
Mm,
but unconsciously or consciously, they take advantage of the privilege that is allotted to them
mhm,
because of the color of their skin.
yeah.
And just for the whole ideology that color of skin is a construct.
Mm,
All of this is a construct
mhm,
because one
mhm.
of my favorite exhibits was that China exhibit that came
Oh,
here to New York,
mhm,
where it was just this without the skin and it was
mhm,
just the bodies. And we got a whole lot of feedback about, having these real people and them
yeah,
not having peace and so forth and the spiritual side of it.
right.
But it,
I
but
I
it
I
allowed,
totally felt that. I totally felt that.
yes. But the bigger point for me was that it made a point that
Mhm,
if you peel back the skin,
mhm,
we all are the same underneath.
mhm, mhm.
My bone structure, my muscle structure
Yeah,
doesn't look any different than a white woman my same
right,
age.
right.
Now, there are things in DNA that can tell whether I'm a person of color when I die because or versus to not. Sure. But as far as the visual,
Mhm,
so that's why I go back to say that racism is a really a mental illness,
mhm,
insecurity of people.
right, right. Well, I mean, just, reading back on, Frantz Fanon's book, Wretched of the Earth, oppression, uh, engenders all type of mental illnesses.
Mhm,
And it creates mental illnesses, in the oppressor, uh, because the oppressor becomes dehumanized, becomes brutal, and it creates, mental illness in the oppressed with, trauma and, anxiety and depression. And often our people, we either implode or explode. So, oppression and class oppression in particular is our biggest problem, and we need a revolution. And I think it's up to us to decide which way that revolution is going to go. But the revolution is coming. And so, people of good faith, of good conscience. And when I was out there on Saturday with my son, we saw all kinds of people out there. There's so many people who are sick and tired of the
yes.
racism, of the sexism, of the beaten up and the impoverishing of the American people. Just so 1,000 people, the group of billionaires who own both political parties, could make more money. And so, we're going to end this segment, and this is our, mind segment on Free Your Mind from Mental Slavery. And we're going to transition now into our next segment, which is on the body, staying healthy and staying strong. So, thank you for your thoughts. It was great
Mhm.
having you
You're
on for
welcome.
this segment, and we're going to have you on for the next segment. So I hope you're ready. Um, and so, I'm going to give it back to you, give you back the mic, and, let's talk about having a, you know healthy body so that we can have, a balanced life and stay strong.
So, thank you.
Okay.
The biggest thing over the years of me doing this nutrition and really having food be thy medicine, um, The biggest takeaway that I want people to take away is number one, get to know your own physical body. You know, if you ate this too many cookies, how you gonna feel. You know, if you drank too much soda, you know how
Yeah,
you feel.
yeah.
So being realistic about what you're taking into your body. The other thing is really understanding how the body works,
Mm,
how the body works. Because the unfortunate thing about the medical world is that they want to make one shoe fits all.
right,
You got hypertension, here's the medication for each of
right.
you.
Take
And
this
it's the
pill.
same, take this pill. It's the same
Yeah,
medication for everybody. And
yeah.
everybody's metabolism and their
Mm,
body is different. And a lot of that has to do with your historical DNA.
mm,
When you consider what your great great grandmother ate to bring your grandmother to
mm,
life, to your mom to life, to bring
mhm.
you to life, that's where your nourishment starts
Right.
in the womb.
Mm,
So that's what brought you to health.
mm,
Um, Also, food has become such a thing that it's like fashion.
right.
And so we have taken it beyond the fact of nourishing our body.
Mm,
The first chefs were alchemists. They looked at you eating whole foods and real food
mm,
for your to maintain your health. That's what food is for. And of course, we've taken it to a whole nother pleasure level for those of us to have the economics. But then the disparity is there are communities that don't even have that luxury, or the communities have been set up where their only options are foods that aren't for their well-being and their best health. When you go into communities where there is disparity or what they call food apartheid,
mm,
or they call, these areas food deserts,
right.
what I've noticed is that we have fast food and we have pharmacies
Mm,
because they go hand in hand together. Because
right,
if you eat a lot of fast food, you're going to end up at the pharmacy.
right.
Then the affordability of food becomes a challenge for certain communities because to get good food costs money.
Mhm.
Second of all, you have this whole thing of industrial farming
Right.
that genetically modifies foods. And then you're talking about the whole food system, because then that even gets into politics of who the food workers are, and this
Mhm.
whole bunch of BS that's going on about people coming over from other countries in here and the border and all this stuff. But for real, if
Mm,
those people weren't coming here, the foods wouldn't get where they're going. These are
mm,
hardworking people who come here and help our food system, and
mm,
for them to be treated, in some cases, some of the farming situations for some of those immigrant farmers is like slavery.
mhm.
um, so that in itself, you don't even consider that when you're cutting that tomato, where
Right,
that tomato come from and
right,
who picked it and what are they going through to even put that tomato on your table.
right,
So
right.
we're unconscious about all those things.
Mm,
But on the positive side, I do work the reason why I'm called a community chef is because I do work within the community to try to uplift communities where we do community gardens. We
mm,
try to help them get into CSAs. I've worked for different organizations like Just Food. Um, and Just Food was an organization that fought to be able to have low income people use their SNAP program. Back then it was called food stamps, to be able to go to farmers markets and get fresh fruits and vegetables. But if you've been in a generation after generation where you haven't had fresh fruits and vegetables on a regular basis and know what to do with them,
mm.
and now you're presented to buying an eggplant and you've
Right.
never used the eggplant
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
what community chefs do is go into gardens, go into nursing homes, go into senior facilities, go into Head Start programs, all these different into school systems,
Mm,
and say, here's the eggplant, and here's some things you can do with it.
right.
And here is the health benefits of why you should incorporate an
Mm,
eggplant into your diet.
yeah.
Okay. And so, again, I have to emphasize that what different people need different nourishment.
Mhm.
So just like you have some people who are allergic to nuts,
Yeah.
but within those people who are allergic to nuts, you have a subset that can't even smell the nuts.
Mm,
Okay. And then you have some people who grow out of it. and
Mhm.
then later on in life they can eat nuts. So
Yeah.
that's why it goes back to what I'm saying. You really need to get in tune with your body, and
Right.
that even connects to your next segment of being just spiritually in tune with who
Mhm.
you are.
Right.
Because historically, different foods grow in different areas
Mhm.
because it deals with the environment.
Right.
So when
Right.
you deal with things like jerk or turmeric or all
Mhm.
those things, most of those things come from hot tropical climates.
Mhm.
And not only do they give an enhanced flavor to the food and make it
Right.
taste good, but they were originally put into place to preserve foods.
Mm.
And then each of those spices and herbs have medicinal things for your body.
Right.
And so people don't understand that. And that's one of the things that I try to educate people around. A lot of times, like in this culinary world, the French get all of this props, but even when you go to culinary school, you're taught the French method, and the name of the school is Escoffier.
Ah, Scotty.
Escoffier was the founder of the Brigadier kitchen setup, which was
Mm.
copied and modeled off of a military setup so that it could run more efficiently
Mhm.
because it wasn't running efficiently.
Mhm.
And the reason why a lot of this Eurocentric cooking is done with wines and sauces, it was because the water was tainted and people were dying of typhoid. So they used the wine, or in Germany, they used beer.
Mhm.
They put sauces on meat that was getting ready to go bad to
Right.
take away the nasty taste, to
Mhm.
make it up. So, but then it's put into this whole elegance of whatever. And when you go
Right.
into other cultures of color, we were already doing spices and herbs and things that made food taste good, but
Mhm.
also were medicinal to our
Right.
bodies. And
Right.
so we've gotten away from that.
Mm.
We've gotten away from that. So like I work in all different kinds of communities from different cultures. And one of the biggest jokes that I have in the Latin community is about sazon.
Mhm.
So I tell them, make your own sazon.
Right.
Because if you read that box
Yeah.
and you read the stuff that you can't pronounce,
Right.
that's the stuff that's making you sick.
Right.
So
Right.
again, the other takeaway I will say in this short thing, because it's so much around
Yeah.
eating healthy, is to read your labels.
Mm.
It needs to be as simple as possible. It
Right.
needs to say real ingredients, sugar, because a lot of times sugar and salt gets a bad rap.
Mm.
You need some of those things too, not just the abundance of it that
Mhm.
happens now, but they
Right.
use sugar and salts as preservatives.
Mhm.
Sea salt is better than table salt
Mm.
because your body is like 60 or 70% water. So just like if you've gone swimming in the ocean and
Mm.
you get the salt water in your mouth, that's how your body is. And
Mm.
so sea salt works with your metabolism far better than table salt
Right.
that comes out of a dehydrated,
Mm.
maybe used to be ocean, and that just retains water.
Mm.
And that's why your blood pressure is affected.
Right.
Sugar actually worsens your blood pressure than salt does.
Mm.
Sugar is addicting.
It is addictive, yes.
Yes. And so but at the same time you need some sugars in your
Mm.
body, but you need natural sugars.
Right,
So
and
all of
if
these
you could have your sugar with the fiber that it comes with, right, then that way your body gets to process it a lot easier.
exactly. So eating fresh fruits instead of fruit juices,
Right.
because when you juice a fruit, you're getting more sugar out of it.
Mhm.
And so if you're diabetic, you have to watch your what they call your glycemic index.
Mhm.
And so that's the glycemic index watches to see how much sugar is in everything you eat, because insulin is what your body produces, which is
Right.
a natural sugar. So everything you eat
Mhm.
turns into insulin
Mm.
because that's the gas that makes your body go.
Mm.
But different foods have different levels of it. And again, depending on your particular
Right.
metabolism, you're going to process that more.
Mhm.
And as you get older, your metabolism changes.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that I could eat when I was younger that I can't eat now.
Right.
And just again, that's me being in tune
Mhm.
with what's going on with my body from day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said that because, for example, I had a heart attack November 2018, and I had already started to become vegan. I grew up 7 Day Adventist. So in
Mhm.
the 7 Day Adventist, we have meat eaters, we have
Mhm.
vegetarians, and we have
Mhm.
vegans all in the same congregation. I mean, the
Mhm.
church promotes veganism, but it doesn't do it in a way that shames people or hates
Mhm.
on people.
Mhm.
Often in political movements, people have good ideas and they have good intentions, but they wind up hurting people and pushing them away. And I think that that example of the Seventh Day Adventist Church, where everybody's welcome, even though they use the most up to date information on what's better for people's health, they don't
Mhm.
shame anybody into being healthy, and they actually help people be healthier. And for me, I have this thing called a lipoprotein little a, which is off the charts. And
Mhm.
people with that condition, they have heart attacks for men before 55,
Mhm.
and women before 65, regardless of your physical activity.
Mhm.
And so, people talk about adding good oils to your food, and I always did that. But in my situation, I can't have any oils, you
See,
know. So
that's a good.
not even
Mhm.
vegetable oils, because my body's already overproducing
Mhm.
cholesterol on its
Mhm.
own without, regardless of what I'm eating. So I have to, I follow Dr. Esselstyn's very strict protocol around
Mhm.
uh don't eat any animal products. I don't eat eggs, I don't eat fish,
Mhm.
I don't have oils. I do have flax seeds so I can get some omega 3.
Omega 3s.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that kind of a thing. But you're right. People have to take the time and find out what's up with their bodies. Um and the
I
whole
think
time I
in.
was going to the doctor, we never did a test to see how my arteries were doing, even though I had uncontrolled hypertension for like over 20 years. So,
Mhm.
us being in tune with our own bodies is important. And just one thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to give it to you, and then we're going to wrap up. This whole thing about the food supply is really important. In factory farming, which is what they do now,
Mhm.
they're really torturing the animals. It's
Mhm.
it's torture. And then the waste, the feces and the urine from the animals, they unleash it into the environment, and it poisons people's drinking water. And then we get food that's very cheap, but which is full of hormones, is full of
Mhm.
antibiotics, and that's also killing us. All this is connected. We really got to use a common sense politics for the people, the planet, and the animals. Otherwise, you know, everything is going to get so much worse. And so I'm just going to give it back to you, and then I'll let you have the last word in this segment.
So at the end of the day, there's so many moving parts about health and nutrition because it's political, it's economical,
Hmm.
it's cultural, um, and then the medical world has its own piece into this as well.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, we're standing here going, what do we do? What do we eat?
Right.
How do we maintain? And
Mm.
so I just want to close by saying, again, just to reiterate, get to know what's going on with your body. Pay attention to when you're eating something, how you feel after you eat it.
Mm.
If you feel sluggish, lethargic, not moving, then that's not helping. The
Mm.
nice thing, and I think that everybody's body is different, like I said, and so understand what works for your body.
Mm.
I think that the majority of your diet should be plants.
Mm.
Some people can do that totally, and then there are other people based on other studies that need some type of animal protein. All human beings need vitamin B12,
Mm.
and the greatest source
Right.
of that is from animal protein.
Right.
But that being said, there are other ways to supplement that
Hmm.
where you can still get what you need without eating the animal protein.
Right.
When you look at cultural diets of in people of color, meat was usually used for celebratory reasons,
Right.
or it was only little pieces of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like my grandmother being from, you know, New Orleans, when she cooked greens, it was a smoked ham hock in there, but it was
Right.
just that ham hock. It wasn't a big steak that's this big and then little bitty
Right.
sides around and no vegetables.
Yeah.
Vegetables should be more of your plate.
Mm.
The animal protein, if you do eat it, because I'm the same way. I don't villainize anybody for
Right.
how they eat
Right.
because everybody's body is different.
Hmm.
So, for example, for me, only a most I have gone back and forth with different diets based on how I feel.
Hmm.
I've been a vegan, I've been a vegetarian, I've been what they call it, an omnivore.
Yeah.
I've done all of it, but I do it based on what does my body need. So at this particular time, I don't do any dairy,
Mm.
okay? And I eat plant-based. I would say 80% of my diet is plant-based.
Right.
And if I do eat any meat, the quality of the meat, and like you said, when an animal dies, like for example, back to Minnesota, it's a hunting kind of outdoors kind of place. The father of my children would go fishing and hunting.
Mhm.
And one of the things that happens is because deers would run across the road,
Mhm.
and if a car hit it, they would never butcher that deer because
Mm.
they said that the fear that the deer had from when it died releases a
Mhm.
certain chemical in the body. Like
Right.
all animals have this fear thing that
Mhm.
happens that it would make the meat not worth eating.
Mm.
So when you talk about conditions of industrial farming
Mhm.
and that the fact that you got cows lined up in a chute and pumping stuff into them, all those kind of things,
Mhm.
that's what you're eating.
Right.
And the reason why our immune systems, independent of our predisposed diseases, chronic diseases of
Mhm.
high blood pressure and diabetes that may make us more susceptible to the corona,
Mhm.
our immune systems were already compromised independent of how you're eating if you're not eating to support your immune system because a lot of this food is pumped up with so much
Right.
antibiotic
Right.
that your body doesn't even know how to create its own, army, as I
Mhm.
tell children, to fight off any kind of diseases that are coming there because it's been compromised.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I just really want people to start really investigating where their food comes from,
Mhm.
what the packaging says, ho- and try to incorporate more fresh fruits and vegetables. Try to eat something raw every day if it's
Mhm.
just a salad. Add it on. If you're a McDonald's person, add a salad on.
Mhm.
Try to pick the best things from the McDonald's menu.
Mhm.
Do I feel like McDonald's has a good menu? Personally, no. But
Mm.
if that's what you're used to eating, then get the salad along with that. Get the oatmeal instead of the egg McMuffin,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So, I mean, try to
Yep.
incorporate whatever you have access to,
Mm.
the healthier choices for your body, and really pay attention to how your body is reacting to that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much. Would you like to stay on for the next segment?
I don't mind.
Okay, good, good. So in our next segment, we're going to focus on the spiritual balance for longevity, and I'm going to bring on a brother. He's a young brother. He's an educator, very intelligent young man, and he's a great leader in my school. We have a group of global teachers, and he's our leader in that group. And I feel very privileged and very thankful that he brought us on. He's willing to come on today with us. And in particular, what I brought him on is we wanted to know, in this time of pandemics, of racial violence, of just the total corruption and incompetence of the leadership of this country, how Islam and his faith in Islam, how that's helping him maintain balance with his spirit. Because we know that if your spirit ain't in balance, you're not going to have a long life. You're going to have a hard life. And so, Brother Tariq, welcome to our show. And this is Sister Sia. Welcome. And you have the floor, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Um, can everybody hear me? Am I good? Or
Yes, you're good. Excellent.
so first thing with Islam is it's positively adjusted my perspective of time. So I look at this life as being short, the one that's here at least. As Muslims, we believe that everyone, no matter who you are, will be brought back to God when you die. And based on your conduct, you will be judged, and that will determine where you exist for eternity. So, with that firmly in my mind, that reality unshaken, my perception of time is different from, I think, perhaps maybe most people's perception of time.
Mm,
So, I look at this existence as being short,
mhm,
and it can sometimes put the issues that I deal with during this time into a more positive perspective that lets me handle issues better, including COVID and the political things that are happening right now. Um, Another thing is just remembering the nature of this existence as being a place of sojourn and departure. And those are literally words taken from an English translation of the Quran. Um, Now, another thing that helps me in terms of my view of COVID and getting through these times is looking at COVID as an aspect of the test that I am being tested with in terms of just a part of this whole experience of life, um, and responding to it appropriately. So I am 25 years old.
Mm.
Most of my friends are around my age. My friends are good people for the most part, and they make good choices for the most part, myself included. We're not perfect, but hey, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but there are some pitfalls that
Mm.
come with being on lockdown and being bored, essentially. So
Mm.
even if you remember when things first got shut down, you had certain outlets, um,
Right.
like pornography websites, offering deals. This is
Mm.
the COVID deal.
Right. Right.
Islam has helped me stay away from things like that.
Mm.
Um, Also, certain people are drinking a lot more and
Yeah.
engaging in drug use a lot more just because there's nothing else to do.
Mm.
Islam has helped me in that way also. And if I'm being candid, before Islam, like in my college days, I probably would have made different choices with my boredom. But
Mm.
Yeah.
Right.
thankfully, I had evolved. Another lesson that COVID has taught me is to be more grateful for
Mm.
the blessings that I do have. As an educator
Mhm.
in the public sector, I'm very fortunate to still have consistent payment.
Mm-hmm.
That's not
Mhm.
something to take lightly or for granted in the slightest. I also my apartment window happens to look out onto a Catholic church. And
Mm.
this Catholic church, on a daily basis, does a very beautiful thing. They have a line of people that come every single day. I feel like the line gets bigger and thicker every single day where they're giving away
Wow.
food and different other items that people need. I don't think that that is my view on a daily basis for no reason.
Mm.
One thing that Islam teaches is that from the things that you are blessed with, you must share your blessings with other people. And in
Mm.
fact, that's a requirement if you want to be on the good side of things when your life is over.
Mm.
So remembering that aspect of this test as well, my responsibility to my fellow human beings. Um, so another thing that the Quran reiterates over and over again, and it does it through tales of nature, the transition of night to day. It says that there are signs in the universe for people who are wise. I'm
Mm.
not going to toot my own horn and say I'm wise, but I am going to try to look at this major global phenomenon for lessons. So one
Mhm.
thing that I remember is that on the outset of this, the first countries to report really being afflicted by it were the big time capitalist nations.
Mm-hmm.
First China, then the United States, and then Britain was huge in Europe, and
Italy
it's
too.
Italy as
Yeah.
well. Yes,
Mhm.
it's very interesting that these nations that are the most powerful
Mm-hmm.
are still having to deal with this issue. It
Mm-hmm.
just is a reminder that no matter how much wealth you have, how strong your military is, how advanced your technology becomes, we all get brought back, and
Mm.
there's no getting around it.
Mm.
And you must value each day and be very wise and very careful with the time that you're allotted here. Also, another point is that it even touched within those nations different tiers of society. So you
Right.
even had leaders of states, you
Mm-hmm.
had celebrities. It was COVID didn't really care about your status in
Mm-hmm.
any way,
Mm-hmm.
whereas so many other things are determined by your status. So it was definitely a major point of observation and definitely a learning moment and something to uh, appreciate, I guess you could say, as a lesson.
Right.
Um, Another thing that has become important is remembering to be patient and to persevere patiently.
Let me ask you, brother, just to interrupt you for a second.
Mhm.
We had just come off of Ramadan a week ago.
Great.
And when you said patience and perseverance, I thought right away, I thought about Ramadan. And
Mhm.
maybe you could briefly say what Ramadan is and then continue your thoughts.
Sure. So Ramadan is the month following the lunar calendar where the Quran was first revealed to the Prophet Muhammad.
Mm,
So during the holy month of Ramadan, Muslims fast. They fast from
Mhm.
sun up till sundown. The in the Quran it literally says that the fast is so that you learn self-restraint.
mm,
So, and I think it actually does do a good job because it's you're trying to control your most basic desire, to eat and to drink stuff.
right.
But it also definitely does teach you patience. I remember my first Ramadan. It's funny that you say that. My first Ramadan, I was going through a lot of like personal family stuff.
Mm,
That was like some of the most trying stuff I had been through at that point in time, and it was interesting how it coincided. You ever heard of like when you're hangry, when you get
yeah.
angry because you're hungry, you're hangry.
Yeah.
So when you do get angry and you have that release,
Uh-huh.
there's energy that you're giving up.
Mm,
The way the body works is calories are your gas.
right.
So if you're not very careful with how you conserve your energy, you'll be dealing with some issues, to say the least, in
Right.
terms of
Right.
Ramadan.
Uh,
But so it taught me in general, though, to be very cognizant of my temperament and be patient also. But as it relates to COVID, being patient in terms of and persevering patiently while you're surrounded by so much turmoil and so much there's loss of life. There's people that I know personally who were afflicted by it.
mm,
Remaining calm and patiently kind of just going through without panicking has been immeasurably valuable.
mm,
Um, so another thing that Islam has done has provided me with hope,
mm.
and that comes in terms of having a lot of free time. So another thing with Ramadan is
Yeah.
I had a lot of time to pray.
Yeah.
So with the busy routine of work and stuff like that, you can sometimes neglect your prayers.
Mm,
Being at home, this was the probably the most disciplined Ramadan I've ever had. Like I don't think I missed a single prayer, and
mm,
I hit it at the right time. And I've been able to study the Quran a lot. So being able to do both of those things has given me hope in terms of improving my general outlook and just having a healthier mindset. I've been engaging in less like bickering with
mm,
people, been more of a listener in conversation, not being so quick to try to hurry up and give a response or a comeback or something like that. And my dealings with everyone have just been improved.
wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we have about a couple of minutes left. So before we wrap up the show, we go to the closing. We're going to go to the closing now. I want to thank both of you for being here
Thank you.
today, and I hope you all come back. But you know what? We got about a minute, and half a minute. I'll let Sister have to say something. Then Tariq, you can say something. Then I'm going to wrap up the show. So Sister, go ahead.
So all three of these segments, as you have them designed, are intertwined.
Mhm,
Um, Ramadan not only is a spiritual thing, but it's also good physically to give your body and digestion a rest.
mhm,
Patience and your mentals create, if you are stressed, you're creating, you know, inflammation because your brain creates a chemical that you could be eating super healthy, but if you're not spiritually and mentally at peace,
right.
you can still get sick.
Mhm,
So I hope that as a community, as a world, we start embracing these positive things and injecting them into our lives so that we can get beyond this system that exists
right.
that's just full of death and negativity and bring more positivity.
Absolutely. Uh, Brother Tariq, last words.
Um, I guess one, thank you for having me again. This is like a
Absolutely.
really cool experience. I learned a lot, so that was extremely cool. But as it relates to Islam, I guess I encourage anyone who has the spare time to read the Quran for yourself.
Mm,
No matter what faith you happen to be. Islam
Mhm.
literally translates to submission to the will of God.
mm.
So no matter what your faith is, I would say pick it up, give it a read, and see how it hits you.
Thank you. All right. All right, y'all. So in closing, I want to thank Brother Joe who got me this shirt, Black Lives Matter shirt, at during the Black Lives Matters week of action at in our public schools. And I want a big shout out to my oldest son, Guevara. He turned 30 today. Uh,
Oh, happy
Guevara
birthday.
Turner Kofi Torres. And, we did a little happy birthday thing over Zoom. And I want to thank my 11-year-old Camilo for letting me use his gaming headphones, and to my wife and comrade Jessica, who helped me put this technological stuff together. Because I grew up with a rotary phone and watching black and white TV, so uh, you know, she's helped me understand all of this. So to everybody watching, thank you so much. To Malik, to Joel, to Christine, to Roberto, to Rita, to Carmen, to Stephen, everybody who's been listening tonight, thank you. And we'll see you again next Monday at 8 p.m. All power to the people.
Thank you.
All
Thank you very much.
right. Namaste.
Namaste.